Hello, everyone, and welcome. We have a really exciting interview today. First of all, I'm Sam from the OnTableTop team. Joining me across the table is Justin.
Hello.
And up on the screen, we have Johnny Fraser-Allen, who is here to tell us about Hagglethorn Hollow. Johnny, thank you for coming on the show.
It's a real thrill.
Yeah. Right. Before this interview started, we were all just geeking out about some of our favourite fantasy moments with him.
I have never seen you so excited as whenever you had Johnny here telling you that you matched on the same characters that you love.
Tom Bombadil fan. We are not alone.
Tom Bombadil nut.
Excellent. Yeah, before I start geeking out about Tom Bombadil with you
come on,
again.
it'll be fun. Nice segue.
Okay, well, first question. Who would your ideal casting for Tom Bombadil have been?
Jim Broadbent.
Good choice.
Jim Broadbent, 100% Tom Bombadil. Maybe, you get Barry Gower, who's the same prosthetic artist that did Margaret Thatcher and Hitchcock. Maybe get a bit of fat suit on there, but you don't want him to be too much of a fantastical character. But Tom Bombadil has a magic as a performer. He doesn't seem like a human being. In the same way that, for me, my perfect Bilbo Baggins is Eddie Marzan. He's in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I could see that. Okay, if you want to lead us into the interview proper, otherwise
let's drag us on topic before these two go off on one. I will keep us on point, people. I will keep us on point.
Go on.
Right, so Johnny, first things first, could you tell us a bit about yourself and the work you do at Weta Workshop? Basically, what work have you done that people would have seen in the past?
Okay, sure. I'm Johnny Fraser-Allen. I've worked at Weta Workshop as a conceptual designer, mainly creature conceptual designer and sculptor for 15 years. I've worked on the first 2 years I spent as a miniature builder for King Kong. So I worked on, in a capacity of a team member of maybe 6 other guys for about 2 straight years. We built the miniatures, which at Weta, are called bigatures for King Kong. And I think there was over 65 of them. And so anytime you see Skull Island, whether it's the set where the natives are or where all the ancient ruins where the brontosauruses or apatosauruses are running through and the velociraptors are chasing them, or, the peaks where Kong fights the Rex, all of those I had a hand in building. So I have a fascination of building miniatures and decorating them with foliage, and I love rock and scenic stuff, and that comes from my first 2 years at Weta. And after that I moved on into the design department, which is where my heart is, conceptual design and world building. And my first job there was on Narnia, Prince Caspian.
Oh, wow.
So at that stage I was primarily working on Knickerbrick and some of the dwarves and faun stuff, and then I went on to doing Tintin for quite a while for Spielberg, and
that's a great movie,
which was a thrill. I mean, I made a promise to myself as an 8-year-old that I would work for Spielberg when my birthday party was at Hook, and I walked out of Hook with my mind blown. There's two types of people in this world. There's the type of people that think Hook is a work of genius, and then there's wrong people. and I was so moved by that film, I thought I have to work for that man, and I have twice now, because I also helped design the title character of the BFG for him, and I also designed Flesh Lump Eater, which is BFG's big mean brother.
Yeah.
And between then, I've also worked on The Hobbit for several years, and I'm not working as a sculptor or a designer. I've been creating my own worlds, like the Gloaming and the Wandering Woods, and recently, when I say recently, about 2 years ago. A little backstory to me is I work in film because I'm obsessed with creatures. So I design creatures because of that. And the reason I'm obsessed with creatures is because when I was 5 years old, my older cousin, James, played to me in the same night, recorded off television, The Dark Crystal and The Labyrinth. and
Two
I was
absolutely
introduced
superb
to a
films.
level of world building and creature design that completely inhabited me as a person. And then I went on, and now I work in the film industry designing creatures for the Hobbit and dwarves for the Hobbit and stuff like that, and the BFG and giants and monsters and stuff. And then my gateway drug into the board gaming world was HeroQuest. I could not believe the fact that you could immersively enter this world where it just built in front of you. And I always play the dwarf for obvious reasons, but HeroQuest rocked my socks, and even today, like it's only taken till a couple of years ago when Star Wars Imperial Assault came out for me to bump it to second place in my favorite board games list, you know. And I love the immersiveness of it. But as a world designer and world builder, HeroQuest ticked all my boxes in the fact that not only is it an immersive world that you drop into, but you're an active participant in it, which feeds into what I've tried to capture with Hagglethorn Hollow. But because the only thing I love more than board gaming and tabletop adventures and role-playing and Zombicide and Age of Sigmar and all that stuff, the only thing I love more than tabletop gaming is the movie Labyrinth. And so when I found out that this company, Riverhorse, had got the rights to do Labyrinth, I Googled them and found out Alessio Calvatore runs the company. And I know his name because I collect White Dwarf magazine, as any sensible adult should.
Of course.
And because I happen to be friends with the Perry twins, I wrote an email to Alessio and I forwarded it to the Perry twins, and I said, could you please pass this on to him personally so I don't have to go through the website that they might not see. I don't know how that kind of stuff works. And Alessio replied back, in the positive, and I got the job. And then I quickly realized, bloody hell, I've got to sculpt miniatures now. I've just told him I could. And so the miniatures in the Labyrinth board game, of which you guys very kindly, Ludo was up for Best Miniature of the Year.
Yeah.
Only next to Ariel, the Ever Queen. That's the toughest competition you could ever get. It was a huge privilege to be nominated. But so those were my first miniatures, and so up until that stage, I'd worked in the film industry for 13 or 14 years as a conceptual designer and sculptor. I dabbled in the board game world, and it just opened up a floodgate to me. I've had a wonderful experience in film. I've loved it. I've met amazing people. I've grown as an artist, but I've never been happier than working on board games, because what board games do is I get silly about them because
go ahead, we all do.
So much better than fantasy films to me. Even Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or Avatar, Narnia, anything I've been involved with, it doesn't matter, because a board game offers you the same level of conceptual design, of sculpture, now that we're living in the absolute best age to live in terms of miniature sculpture.
Yeah.
We're now living in an age where you can get a universe in a box. You get Monolith's Conan, you get Cool Mini or Not's Massive Darkness. You open that box and you have a universe inside it, But whereas if you play the Lord of the Rings DVD, which is amazing, or you play Harry Potter, one of your favorite films, that's great. You've got a nice 2 hours ahead of you. But when you get a new board game and you open that lid, not only do you have a universe in the box where you can paint them, choose the colors of it, everything like that, but you are now an active participant in that universe. You are making decisions. You're using luck. You're using strategy, and you enter that universe in a level that is higher than when you're reading the book and is higher than when you're watching the film. So for me, as a creative, as someone who builds worlds and gets excited about fantasy worlds, nothing excites me more than the board gaming community. And and I really figured that out while working on Labyrinth and Dark Crystal, and I formed Tabletop Troubadour off the back of that with my business partner Ike Hammond, and we've just excitedly and passionately gone from strength to strength, and which brings us to Hagglethorn Hollow.
It's something I find incredibly heartwarming, Johnny, is seeing someone who has came from the Weta Workshop talent pool, because some of the stuff that I've seen come out of the studio through the years has just absolutely blown me away. And to see someone with that amount of talent, that amount of creativity decide, you know what, I want to step into the tabletop world, makes me incredibly, incredibly happy. Now, Sam, do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, of course. So, where exactly did the idea for Hagglethorn Hollow come from? You've talked about a lot of your movie influences there, but what made you want to create this world? Why did you want to make this terrain?
Well, I love the tactile nature of sculpting, but I'm also a wargamer, and so my favorite games. And when I list these, think about how Hagglethorn Hollow tactilely fits in with these worlds, right? You know, I love playing board games. I love the cardboard printed tile art. You know, there's a lot of geniuses working out there. They should all have a monument to them. But you know, I'm so tactile, and I want miniatures today are so mind-blowingly awesome. Let me put it this way: like when you watch Lord of the Rings, there's all these great characters, or when you read Lord of the Rings, there's all these great characters. But the biggest character in Middle-earth is Middle-earth. You know, if you can't have those stories and those visuals without the landscapes and the towns and everything. I got into the Lord of the Rings Games Workshop game in a big way. I love the figures, and I think to date it's still some of Games Workshop's best work, and I think it raised their level. Beautiful stuff. I own all of them, painted all of them, love it. I've got RSI because of it, and so, but the landscapes, like, for me, it was never enough to just have like a green playing board, a couple of woodland scenic trees, and rolling some dice, because it didn't feel like Middle-earth. And same way, like, I love Cool Mini or Not. I love Zombicide and Massive Darkness. And so the miniatures you get in Cool Mini or Not and Zombicide, Massive Darkness blow my mind. I love the NPC characters, the heroes, everything. It's a beautiful world. But again, to me, 50% of a fantasy world is the world that those characters are inhabiting. Mm-hmm. And then the thing that really kicked everything off for me is that I started my own role-playing group with a group of friends that had been doing it for a while. And I said, look, get me in on your next one. I've got to be part of this. And so a group of guys and gals came over with their established character. They helped me build my own character, which is this gobshite little gnome called Soddington Ottersloose, the minstrel. He's a cross between Tyrion Lannister and Jack Sparrow.
Oh, I love this character.
I'm sold.
Yeah, I've got to illustrate him at some point. But like anybody role-playing, it's basically a fantasized version of yourself that you can put in a fantasy world. Anyway, so we're playing this pen and paper role-playing campaign, and every time, you know, the dungeon master says, all right, we're going to a tavern, and the surly bartender gives you a look. I'm like, I could make a tavern, you know? And it's like, okay, we're entering this haunted forest, and there's a wizard's cottage in the middle of the forest. It's like, you should have told me, mate. I could have sculpted that, you know? Give me a chance, you know? And I love the pen and paper stuff, but I just, I always wanted, whenever I read a book, I want to illustrate my version of that character, which is why it was such a blessing to work on The Hobbit and be, you know, influence Radagast and some of the dwarves and the trolls and other things I worked on.
Oh, yes.
But, and when I got to work on the BFG, I got to see my version of the BFG on screen, the same one I read as a kid, you know. And it's the same thing when I'm playing a board game or a role-playing game. It's like you go into a tavern, it's like, let me tell you what a tavern looks like to me. And when you're asking about influences, for me, a very strong influence for what Hagglethorn Hollow looks like is when I read Terry Pratchett's books.
Discworld!
I read Anka Morpork. Anka Morpork to me was this festering, looming, towering place that was like history built on top of history, built on top of history, that was sunken and crumbling and leaning and derelict. So Hagglethorn Hollow came out of the fact that I went online and I looked at other people's products, which are amazing. There's some great stuff out there. And if you don't want to buy Hagglethorn Hollow, don't worry about it. There's a lot of other stuff, good stuff out there.
No. They want to buy your stuff. Your stuff is beautiful.
For me, because the stuff that I was looking at was very straight. And as someone that molds and casts and pays for his own products, I understand why a company would make very thin walls and would make very straight, symmetrical buildings, and because it's more cost effective to them, right? Mm-hmm. And I looked at those, and I add to cart, and then I looked at the price of my cart, and I thought, you know what? I'd rather spend that on molding costs for myself. Mm. And what you've got to understand about Hagglethorn Hollow is that all of it was made just for me before I ever dreamed of commercializing it as a product. Because I wanted to make, and you can see, I wanted to make a product that is leaning and teetering and sinking and crumbling. And I wanted, I defy you to find a product online currently out of all the amazing products you can buy, and there's some good stuff out there. I'm a fan, and more power to everyone in this community. But everything has Tudor beams in it, which for me, as an overthinking conceptual designer for the film industry, and for me, Lord of the Rings exists before the 14th century.
Yeah.
Anka Morpork, even though it's on the back of a turtle in space, exists before the 14th century.
At least
Zombicide, Black Plague, Age of Sigmar, that's not the 14th century, it's prior to that. I wanted to create a world where the gamer, me, can play where it looks like the fantasy world you feel like you know and love from existing cultural things, but it also predates the 14th century, and at the same time it can fit in with any terrain you've got, whether it be from the amazing range from Tabletop World or some of the outstanding stuff Games Workshop's coming out with. This stuff could fit within that scenery, but just look like an older part of that town.
Yeah,
that's what excited me, and so that's what I started doing when I approached sculpting this product.
Yeah, well, that does bring us to the next question that we were going to have there, because seeing the components that you have in front of you there, they do look like buildings that have been standing for a few hundred years. Whenever you began the designing of these, I'm actually wondering, what would be your top tips for someone who would maybe want to come along and actually have a bash at it themselves, for an aspiring sculptor?
Yeah, how did you go about sculpting these?
Well, because I have access to a team of close friends that are the molding department of Weta Workshop. These are the same guys that are casting Gandalf's nose and Thorin shield, Oaken shield.
Yeah.
I've taught myself to sculpt, to design, to paint, to do everything. The one thing I leave to the professionals is molding and casting, because I don't have a head for maths,
Yeah.
And it's a very technical process. And you stuff up the mold, you stuff up the sculpt. And as I say, I've created worlds like the Gloaming and Wandering Woods that I've just paid through the teeth to get people to sculpt, to cast for me. So in terms of the process, I was always going to sculpt this in plasticine, and this is the same plasticine that we sculpted the dwarven prosthetics in for Hobbit, or the same plasticine that we sculpt the collectibles from Weta Workshop of Galadriel or whatever you like, And so I've got the tools. I know this plasticine well. I love working in it, and what plasticine gives you, I'm not building this out of foam card and cardboard and stuff. Everything is sculpted in plasticine, so I can do whatever I want. And for me, whatever I want happens to be ancient masonry and ancient worlds. So I always knew it was going to get molded and cast. So in terms of tips for people, I use a medium Chavant clay, and in terms of creating this world, not a single item you see here that I'm going to show to you how it works in a second, but not a single piece was drawn or designed. I just started pushing clay with a stick until the building came out.
That's incredible.
For me, I find the building. For me, how I was saying how Middle Earth is the biggest character in Middle Earth.
Oh yeah.
for me, these buildings, each building is a character. I'm not just, I guess I'll do the tavern and I draw a tavern and sculpt it. I find the character of the building in clay, and that's very important to me. So I'd never start with a sketch. I just start pushing stuff around because I have something in physical. And so what I start with these is, I started with the 4 bases of each building, right?
Yeah.
And because I'm sculpting this as a gamer, and again, all of these were made before I ever thought I'd sell them, and I'm purely making these for me personally as a gamer who I may happen to fill a gap in the market that exists now, but that's only because I wanted to sculpt something that I couldn't find online because I had a very specific idea of what I wanted to game with. And so I've painted thousands and thousands of miniatures, and we're at Tabletop Troubadour Game Studio at the moment, and they're all at my house, so I can have access to them when I game. And I said to Ike before the interview, I was like, oh my God, you know what I forgot? I didn't bring a miniature. And Ike happens to have one miniature on his desk, which is Sarah Connor. So she's a little out of theme here, but she has the exact same round base as your everyday Cool Mini or Not miniature, you know, for point of reference. And so just to show you, like, if the buildings, I'm able to sculpt, the walls are kind of leaning outwards, which when you look at it from a side profile, gives it a really quirky sort of, you know, what's the
almost organic.
Hogsmeade, you know, like a Hogsmeade or a Brie, or you know,
I could
a
see,
Rohan kind of a feel.
I could see the Mendic drum.
Was a big thing there, you know. But and so it looks great from the side profile, but when you look at it tilted up, you get a really open view of the floor plan of this building, which is, you know, is a Eurocentric medieval tavern sort of thing. And so and then also I wanted, so you can fit like 20 miniatures inside this, so you can have a real decent, are you looking at my pint pub fight, you know?
Yeah.
Which is, you know, if your role-playing campaign goes into a pub, a tavern, and a fight doesn't start, your dungeon master's doing something wrong. You know? and so I wanted to create that. And the tavern is so important because that's where all the good HeroQuest fellowships meet up, right? And so I started all the buildings with this one floor plan. And then I got this molded, and I got this cast. And so I got this as a hard copy, which then I could sculpt the next floors on. And because I'm conscious of how much work it takes to paint something as a gamer, and let's face it, as gamers, we've all got about 7 projects on the go that we're all as interested in. But you know, and because I like so many game systems, I wanted to make something that I could use modularly. I wanted to make something that would work perfectly in my role-playing campaigns, would work perfect for playing Zombicide Black Plague, would work perfect for playing HeroQuest, for elevating Age of Sigmar, Lord of the Rings, Super Dungeon Explorer, all of the games that I collect that mean something to me. If I'm putting all of this work and all this money and all this time and patience and capital into, I wanted it to work across the board for me. So whenever friends come around to play games at my place, I can bring this out and it feels different every time and it's not the same city. And so I made several different roof options to go with this. So you've got your base here, and then here's your tile town. And remember, this is a color palette I've chosen to go with because I like tan color palettes. I like the artwork of Brian Froud, and for me, this lends itself well to King's Landing from Game of Thrones, or the Labyrinth, or you know, Hogsmeade from Harry Potter. There's a lot of stuff out there with a tan color palette that sorts, but you could paint this with a, you know, that kind of World of Warcraft blue roof and the grey stone and the white stucco.
Yes.
Whatever you want to do, you can paint it. So anyway, so here's one floor, you know, and also what you've got to remember here is that I've sculpted every single side of the building to look completely different.
Yeah.
So you can have 4 of this same building on your gaming table and it will look like 4 different buildings. Yeah. But also what you're getting is you can't really get a lot of buildings this big. And I wanted a towering like Ankh-Morpork level city
Ooh.
for you to roleplay in, or for you to Age of Sigmar in, you know?
Sorry, I just had an idea. The Tower of Art. If you made the Tower of Art, well, you'd never be able to ship it anywhere, but I would be so happy. Sorry, go on.
No, that's a good point. I mean, obviously, this isn't none of this is licensed to a particular brand like Discworld, but I mean, in terms of what my influences are, a huge influence for me was when I got to. Obviously, this looks nothing like Lake Town, but I got to visit the set of Lake Town, and for some reason, I'd put tabletop gaming aside and had tried to focus on some other stuff. And when I went to Lake Town, I thought, you know what? I need to start building towns again and start building cities. So you can see the scale of this. So here's your this is the tile town, right? But I'll put that aside, and then now it's a completely different world. Now it's this it lines up. This is my prototype. We're still working with the factory on what you're going to get. But so now you've got this whole fantastical thatched tavern. But on top of that, when you're not using this sits just on the ground like this. So now you've got a fantastic
longhouse
place, right?
Yeah.
And also we've got this dungeon that I've made here. So you can use this just as a dungeon in your scenery, and it works. You know, if you've collected the amazing product that is Dwarven Forge or printable scenery stuff, if you've got some cool dungeon stuff, this goes perfectly with any of that. Because it's not a competition. We're all making great games for people to play with, And so you've got that dungeon, but now you can stick that on there like this. And you've got this kind of cool, Thrain's place to go visit. Yeah. Or you can. This goes perfectly well with this as well.
Wow.
That, and you can see the scale, and everything's made so like a character can stand here and there on a base, because I need that to happen for my personal gaming.
Oh, of course.
So you got that, and then you also can swap that out. So with each set, you're getting yourself, 7 or 8 or 10, whatever different options of and you can feel the scale of how that becomes this towering mega city, but in a medieval theme. Yeah. And so that also, and then if you want to go to a ruin, this same dungeon can work like this. That's the piece.
So we can do like a ruined sort of
a ruined tower. Yeah.
Very.
So now you've got. Oh, this is the big one. I see what I'm doing wrong. There it is. There. All right. So now you've got a big, luxurious ruin that you can really get right into with your players.
This is something I actually adore about the project that you've got here, Johnny. You're building it for yourself, so every consideration that you're putting into what's now becoming a product is a consideration that an actual gamer would be thinking of, and I think that's just so cool.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Like for me, part of that is when I look at what makes my favorite film, and which is about world building, I look at something like The Labyrinth or Dark Crystal, and I know that a genius like Jim Henson saw the work of someone like Brian Froud and said, I want it to look like that. Let's give that genius, Brian Froud, a team of people to make a world look like his vision. And because of that, you get a really cohesive vision. And I'm not for 1 second comparing myself to either of those phenomenal greats, but I do realize the fact that when you've just got one person concentrating on how something looks as opposed to several people giving their opinions, I've always been a strong believer that if you focus on just pleasing yourself and what appeals to you, then you're going to create something special that may find its audience or may not. For me, it's not personally important if this if Hagglethorn Hollow doesn't find its audience. But you read some of the comments on the recent tested video, and people seem to respond to it well, and that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
But that's just come out of a place for me where I've tried to make, for me, my perfect visual world. Because like anybody that is role playing or playing a board game, we are escapists, and the word escapist may have like a dirty word or a negative word to some people, but I embrace it. Escape. You know.
Yeah.
I've made this world to escape into.
Yeah, the way I always describe the games we play is they are windows into worlds that we can actually go and explore and escape to.
Yeah.
And that's something incredibly special with our industry.
Yeah. If I may actually quote Tolkien, he was once asked why he writes fantasy. I believe his reply was, "Would you have a prisoner think only of their jail cell?"
Oh, that's so beautiful, and that's what it is for me. Like I had the most happiest childhood in the world. I've got a great group of friends. I got a loving wife. I have the best dog on the planet. I have a great job that I love. I've started a business that's doing well. I'm very happy. I'm not in the terrible situation that I need to escape from, but it doesn't stop me from spending every minute of every day creating a fantasy world for me to drop into, because it's just too much fun. And I've been involved with helping other people realize their fantasy dreams through films and their goals and stuff. And I have a very specific idea of what I think my fantasy world would be if and I've spent the last decade creating that through various means. And if other people like or enjoy that or respond to it, then that's great. And if nobody does, then more for me. I don't know. It's just. And again, you're talking about, with the idea of escapism, you can read a book and it's better than a movie because you can really invest yourself in it, in terms of how you imagine it. You can watch a movie and tune out and enter someone else's fantasy world, and it's good fun. And, I've enjoyed a lifetime of some pretty good movies. But with board gaming or role-playing, when you're rolling that dice, when you're deciding who your character is on your character sheet, that's a level of investment and fantasy immersion that nothing else offers that, And for me, the only thing that's a step up from that sort of fantasy immersion is creating a world for that to physically step into. And I love miniatures and models because I love the craft. I love, in the same way that when I watch a Leica movie, like the box trolls, I have an anxiety attack and I freak out. They're the best movies I can watch, or Labyrinth or box trolls, whatever. Every single frame of that movie has been handcrafted by a craftsperson just so you can escape into a fantasy world. And it's incredible, and it's a real gift. And there isn't a better age to be a gamer than right now. And I'm not trying to capitalize on that. I'm just enjoying getting lost in it. You know?
Well, now there is one particular thing that you created that caught my eye, made me very excited, and that is the tree creatures.
Right?
Yeah, there's one of them. Oh, there's two of them. They're sprouting all over.
I've made a heap, and I got to tell you, these were made on a whim, just to fill up my gaming board. And we at Tabletop Troubadour Games had no idea the response we were going to get from these. And if you're excited, then great, and get excited. And anybody watching this video, get excited, because we are going to be launching a campaign once we successfully wrap up Hagglethorn Hollow. We are going to be doing a tree creatures campaign, and
Nice.
We're going to be breaking into tree creatures, dryads, and just normal haunted trees. And I have a passion for trees. For me, I remember being 14 reading The Lord of the Rings when the Ents marched on Isengard.
Oh, yes.
And I think that it was better than my wedding, There's a few moments in my life that, just curdled my blood like that and made my heart pound out of my chest. And in the same way that, when a lot of fangorn came out of Tolkien having to study Macbeth in class, and he got excited when they said that the forest of, is it Dunharrow, are marching towards us, and then being really disappointed when it turned out to just be some soldiers holding branches in front of him.
I never
He was
made that
legitimately
connection.
excited about a forest marching,
Yeah.
and from authors like Brian Sibley and stuff that seem to think that really informed the marching of the Ents. I'm the same way. I can't walk through a forest without seeing characters in the trees. And when I was 16, I went to England on a Tolkien pilgrimage and visited where he wrote the books and his grave and stuff. And suddenly, New Zealand is a young country. So suddenly I'm in a country full of castles and history and oak trees and the kind of deciduous trees that of the sort we don't get in New Zealand. And I've been working on a book called The Wandering Woods, which is full of these tree creatures that are permanently on the move as a unit to escape the axes of man. And and so I sculpted all of these for this is a tree rex.
Yeah.
Because the second best movie of all time after Labyrinth is Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is a deer, sort of a stag sort of thing. And the idea being that from nearly every angle it just looks like a tree.
Mm-hmm.
But then you walk around the front of it and see it from one particular angle and it's suddenly a creature. For me, that's good fantasy. That's and in terms of your quest as in a campaign, or the fact that as a gamer you can just plonk that on your board and you've got here's 2 trees, you've got a forest. You stick 5 in there, you're laughing. But also, if you want to invest in your gameplay or your narrative, similar to how Games Workshop have been approaching the Sylvaneth, which I love, you can suddenly start dictating movement points to these guys and have them as. I love the idea that terrain is a personality on your board. That's what Hagglethorn Hollow is all about. It's not just something you plonk on your board for your miniatures to live and evolve and play a game around. I want the scenery to have a living character. Mm-hmm. And so with these trees or with these buildings, it's about giving as much character to your game as your game is giving you, the gamer,
All right, well, here's a question for you, Johnny. When can we expect to see the Hagglethorn Hollow campaign kick off? Do you have a rough sort of timescale that you're looking to launch on?
We have an exact sort of time scale, if you like. It is happening. Tomorrow is the 1st of September, so if this comes out, when this video comes out, I'm going to be able to say it's happening this month. It is happening the 26th of September. Mm-hmm. That's 2 days after Jim Henson's birthday, if you can remember.
Good timing.
So the 26th of September, it's going to be hitting Kickstarter, and if you haven't read it already from the Tabletop Troubadour Facebook page, then you can hear it here on Best of War video, that we not only are producing it in a material that's going to get straight to your table and you can buy and put on your table, which would look like this.
Yeah.
This is a product we've had back from our manufacturers. We're loving it. But we can now confirm that you're also going to get it painted if you want to go into that tier.
Nice.
Excellent.
So, by the time you unpack it out of your box, you can be rolling dice as soon as your friends turn up.
Nice.
And a lot of people are happy to play without painted miniatures or painted scenery. For me, it's where I draw the line.
Yeah.
And on top of that, because, and the same reason we are going out of our way to make sure you can get it like this, or you can get it like this, you can get it painted. We're also making sure that it's going to come out as a 3D print campaign later on.
Nice.
And because it's later on, we've now been able to team up with one of the world's leading 3D print campaign produces, and who which for us means that you as a customer are going to get all of the customer support after the campaign wraps up. It's not just here's the files, knock yourself out. You're going to get that current customer support and helping you with your 3D printer and all that kind of stuff. Because as happy as I am with my own set here, I have no interest in people getting something they're not happy with.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Well, I think that just about wraps us up for the interview. But before we head on, Johnny, I think you guys have a quick exclusive video for us. If you just want to introduce us to that.
Right. Okay. So while I've been working away on this over the last couple of years, Ike, my at Tabletop Troubadour, has been sneaking around with his camera and has captured some footage of me sculpting away and us setting up the table that you see on Tested and stuff like that. And so he thought it would be nice to compile some of that footage for the Beast of War guys. Basically because more than anything, this Beast of War gaming community is about makers and creatives. And it's all very nice to see someone's finished table, but if you're like me, you want to see how they bloody made it. I want to see the process.
Oh yeah.
And so Ike's compiled a little video of whatever we've got lying around for that, and this is it.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now, and be sure to check out beastsofwar.com for the latest gaming news and gaming Let's Plays. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.